you can go ahead and share it out to anyone who might not be able to join us at this time. So my apologies about that. So next thing I wanted to mention is that we are fully integrated with both Clever and Google Classroom, which makes adding Listenwise seamless into your already existing classroom routine. So I'll show you in a minute here how you can connect your Listenwise account with Google Classroom, since I believe that is what you all are already using. And through Google Classroom, in addition to doing single sign-on, so you and your students won't have to remember any separate credentials, you can also do roster import, as well as import or share both assignments and quizzes from Listenwise directly into Google. So your students can get into all of their Listenwise assignments directly through Google. They can connect directly into Listenwise, and then once they complete quizzes, their grades can be shared over into your Google Gradebook as well. So you can have all of that reflected into Google. So are there any questions about any of that before we go ahead and just go over how to get started with your Listenwise accounts? I did see, do we have an SSO with ClassLink? So we don't, unfortunately, we don't have an integration at this time with ClassLink. We do have, as I mentioned, Google and Clever available for single sign-on, and then some other LMSs we are able to integrate with, but this time, unfortunately, not able to integrate with ClassLink. And I see a question about being able to adjust the content based on Lexile level. So yes, we do actually have Lexile audio levels available on all of our Listenwise lessons. And when we actually jump into the website in a few minutes, I'll show you how you can search and differentiate by that. Awesome. Well, we can go ahead and jump into how to actually get started with your own Listenwise account. So getting started, for those of you who haven't already set up your accounts, is extremely easy. All you have to do is go to listenwise.com and you click on the Join Free button here. It will then prompt you to sign up for your account, where you can either sign up directly through the website, or you can sign up with Google or Clever if you want to integrate with your already existing accounts there. Either way, the first time that you sign up for your Listenwise account, you have to put in your school's premium code, which you will see I've listed here. I will also put this, oops, sorry about that. I'm going to put your premium code into the chat box as well, so you all have that there. But if at any time you need this information, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be more than happy to provide that to you all. This premium code is what is going to connect your account with your school subscription and provide you full access to our entire Listenwise premium library and resources. And I see, the code was also in the calendar notes, so perfect. But if at any time in the future, if you or any other teachers that aren't here need that, feel free to reach out and be more than happy to provide that. Once you have created your Listenwise account, then the next step is to set up your classes. Once again, you have a couple of options here. You can either add a new class directly in Listenwise, or if you are going through Google, then you just click on Import Google Classroom here. This is what I recommend if you all are using Google, as it's the easiest way just to import classes and rosters directly into the website. And it's great for classroom management because we have a full integration with Google where you can update your class roster in Listenwise with one click of a button if you make any updates to the class roster in Google. So I'm going to go over here, importing classes from Google, assuming that that's the way that you all are going to be getting your classes set up. So once again, just click on that Import Google Classroom button here. And you're going to be brought to this page where it's going to show you all the classes that you have already set up in Google. And then all you have to do is just click on the ones that you want to import over into Listenwise, and you can go ahead and bring those over. I saw the question here, our scholars have Google accounts, but we do not use Google Classroom. Does the Google Classroom link still work for them, or do they need to be in Google Classroom? So if your students, so you do need to import the rosters over from Google for your students to be able to log into their accounts using their Google credentials, because the platform's all it's all driven through the teacher accounts. So teachers set up their classes, enroll students within the classes, and then students are able to sign into their accounts through that teacher class. So everything is run through the teacher class. If you aren't going to be going through Google Classroom for your classes, it's very simple as well. All you have to do is click on the Add New Class button over here, and it will walk you through manually creating a class in Listenwise, not through Google. And then what you can do is there's a class code specific to that class. You just share that with your students, and when they sign up for their account directly in Listenwise, they just will need to put in that class code, and it will enroll them within that class in Listenwise. So I'll show you here where your students can go ahead and input that information if you're going to be going directly through Listenwise and not through Google. I did want to mention, though, for once you have your classes set up for managing your class rosters, you just go to the Manage Classes tab on your Listenwise teacher dashboard, which when we go into the website, I'll show you where you can find all of this. But this is where you can go ahead and look. You can take a look at your existing Listenwise classes. You can update the rosters here. So as I mentioned, if you've gone through Google, then you'll see this button down here, Update Roster from Google Classroom. Just click on that, and we'll update the roster automatically with any changes that you may have made in Google. If you are going to be going directly through Listenwise, not going through Google, all you'll have to do is once you set up the class, you'll see this class code here. This is the code that you'll have to provide to your students to get them enrolled into that specific class there. And so once your students go to sign up for their accounts, they'll just need to put in this class code, and that is what will enroll them within that class. So this is what it looks like in your students' end when they go to sign up for their Listenwise accounts. They go to listenwise.com/students. Here they'll have a couple options, just like you do, to sign up for their Listenwise accounts. They can either click on the login with Google button here if you have signed up through Google. If your students have Clever accounts, then they can click on login with Clever here and just log in using those Clever accounts. Or if everything's going to be going directly through the Listenwise website, not through another system, then they'll just click on the Sign Up Now button here on the left. There they'll be walked through a quick student account sign up page where they'll have to just put in some basic information, and then that is where they'll be prompted to put in that class code, which you would provide it to them, which is how they will get enrolled within your class. So hopefully that all makes sense. Let me know if there are any questions about the different ways that your students can get signed up for their accounts. This all is also covered within that instructional guide that we have provided. But if you have any questions at all, just let me know, and I'd be more than happy to help you get your students all enrolled within your class. Lastly, I just wanted to show you what the student homepage looks like over here. This is what your students will see when they log into their Listenwise accounts. They will see on the left-hand side here any assignments that they have upcoming, as well as any work that they have completed. You'll see you're able to provide feedback to your students on work they've completed. So any work that you provided feedback on, they'll see this feedback received icon down here, and they can review it to see their work and to see what their teacher has provided to them. On the right-hand side over here is where students can search through our library. So they can search for stories on their own. They can browse our most recent current events. So we do provide options for students to be able to browse through the library on their own, which a lot of teachers like to do for more student-led, independent type work. So that's all available to them as well. And to answer this other question about being able to see their own work or their other scholars as well. So students can or scholars can just see their work there. They aren't able to see their classmates' work. So they'll just see their own work. So are there any questions about any of that, about getting students signed up or getting your classes created, or getting your account set up? Any questions before we jump into the website and just walk through a Listenwise lesson? Awesome. So I'm jumping over to the website now so you can see, if you haven't had a chance to browse Listenwise yet, this is what your Listenwise teacher dashboard looks like here when you go ahead and sign up. Up top here on the navigation bar is where you will be able to find all the different areas of the Listenwise website. So under lessons, this is where you can browse through our library. This is where you can search through all of our lessons. If you want to look at all subjects, if you want to look at a specific subject, social studies, science, ELA, you can do so there. We have collections here. So each collection contains about 12 to 15 Listenwise lessons that are all based around a central theme. So these are things like the human connection, coming of age. We have an SEL collection here. This is a great place to start if you are teaching one of these specific themes within the classroom. It can be a great entry point because you can find a lot of different lessons here that are going to relate to that specific topic that you are teaching in the classroom. The other way that you can browse through our library, and probably our most popular way, is through the search feature here. So this is where you can search our entire library for a specific topic or subject area. Maybe you're teaching or you're reading a book in the classroom and you want to find lessons that are related to the themes of that book. So all of that you can search for here. Down below, you can also specify by different criteria. So for example, if you want to search by a specific subject area, as I mentioned earlier, we have Lexile audio measures on all of our lessons. So these are a measure of the complexity of the passage. So we do like to just mention that because it is, while related to the Lexile reading measures, because it was developed by the same developers, it is a different measure than those Lexile reading levels. The Lexile audio measure is not a student measure. It measures the complexity of the passage itself. So you can find based on the difficulty level of that passage, you can find what's going to be a good fit for your classroom. And if you click on the question mark here, it brings up a guide, which, as you'll see, will show you based on what grade level you're teaching. This will provide you with a recommended range for what Lexile levels are going to be a good fit for that grade level. So you can get a good starting point here and find good stories for or appropriate stories for your students. Grade level here, so all of our lessons are also segmented as either elementary, middle, and high school based on their content. So you can search for specific grade levels here. And then lastly, down below, you can search for different specific criteria that are included in the lesson, including things like whether they have a quiz, whether they have additional scaffolded supports, which are great for English learners, or if you want something specifically from our current events or collections libraries here. So you can get as specific as you want down below and find lessons that are going to be a good fit for what you're teaching in the classroom. So I'll show you how you can search through the library. For example, if you want to search for stories on weather, and then say, for example, I want to use a quiz with my students. So I'm going to search specifically for lessons that have a quiz, and I also want to use it with my English learners. So I'm going to search just for ones that have that additional scaffolding. So it was able to drill down and find a couple of stories that looked like they could be a good fit for me. So the icons here tell me a little bit more about this particular lesson. So this one has a Lexile audio measure of 1,000, which I can go over here and reference and see what kind of grade level that might be a good fit for. This tells me there's a comprehension quiz available with this lesson, as well as that additional scaffolding. So this looks like it'll be a good story to use with my English learners. Once you find the lesson that you think is going to be a good fit for the classroom, just click into it. And this is where you can then see all of the different resources that are available to you on this particular lesson. So as you'll see here under the story description, we have the audio here and that interactive transcript. I'm just going to play a quick bit of the story just so you can see how the transcript follows along with the audio as it's being read aloud.
We have the latest coverage this morning on the fall of the Roman Empire. Who knew there would be breaking news on this subject? A 2,000-year-old building collapsed in Pompeii last month. 2 more walls collapsed at the archaeological site yesterday.
So as you saw there, the transcript follows along word by word as it's being read aloud, which once again is great for English learners and struggling readers because it can really help them follow along with the audio. We also have a slower audio feature here, which slows down the audio by about 20%. Once again, great for those English learners and struggling readers. Under the assignment resources tab is where you'll find listening comprehension and discussion questions. We have vocabulary lists here, both standard and tiered vocabulary lists for English learners. You'll also find listening organizers, which you can assign to your students to have them complete as part of the assignment. So things like T-charts or language identification organizers. You can kind of pick and choose and figure out what's going to be the best fit for your class. Under the teacher's guide is where you will find things like pre-teaching and post-teaching activities, as well as standards alignment. So all of our lessons are aligned to your state standards. And depending on where your school is, when you register with that premium code, it will be aligned for your particular state standard. So for me, for example, I'm here in Massachusetts, so I have the Mass state standards here, but for you all in California, you will see the California state standards there. I saw the question in the chat box about language options. So currently all of our lessons are all in English, but we have heard a lot of feedback about having lessons available in other languages. So that is something that we are considering for future additions to our library is other languages. Spanish is the one that we have heard the most feedback on, but that's definitely something that we're looking into, granted, if we're able to just source enough of the content to be able to build out that library. So we're hoping to be able to add that in the future. Under the scaffolding tab, this is where you will find, for those lessons that have additional scaffolded supports for English learners, you'll find things like the Tier 2 and Tier 3 vocabulary, as well as close listening with language practices that can be really useful for using with English learners. And lastly, under the quiz tab here, this is where any lessons that or current events that include a quiz, you will see the multiple choice quiz questions here. So you can click on this preview as a student if you want to do a quick preview of the multiple choice. If you want to do a preview of the multiple choice questions here to get an idea of what your students are going to be taking on in the quiz. And I will show you up here, this, once you've decided that this is a lesson that you want to use with your students, you have a few different options for assigning it to your class. First off, if you want to just do a quick assignment, you can always just share the audio to your class, either through Google Classroom, or you have the link here where you can share this to your students and they can just go ahead and listen. If you want them to listen on their own, maybe do a quick writing prompt or something like that. You can always do a quick lesson in that way. The other thing that you can do if you want to do a more formalized assignment, though, is you can either create a written assignment or you can assign a quiz. So I'll walk you through both of these right now. So I'll start with creating a written assignment. So it will walk you through step by step on how you create the assignment for the class. So first step here is just to name the assignment. One thing to note about the name of the assignment is this only appears on your end. So this will show up under your My Library tab under assignments that you've created. But when you assign it to your students, they will just see the assignment with the name of the story. And the reason I want to point this out is because this can be a great way if you're creating multiple versions of the assignment to differentiate on your end based on what resources that you are providing. So for example, if you want to create one version of the assignment just for your English learners, you can say like Pompey assignment ELL. Provide the English, those scaffolded supports for your English learners, and then assign it to just those students. And then you can come back, create a second version of the assignment for your Gen Ed students, and maybe just name that one Pompey assignment Gen Ed or something like that. So that's just an important note right there for keeping organized on your end. Here on the first page, you can decide what supports you want to provide to your students. So whether you want to provide them with that transcript, the read aloud text help toolbar, vocabulary lists. For example, I'm going to do the tiered vocabulary. So this is going to be for my English learners. You can decide all of that here on what supports you want to provide to your students. Next is where you can choose one of those listening organizers to include as part of the assignment. So if you want to have your students complete one of these, you can go ahead and choose one here. On the questions tab, this is where you can decide any questions that you want to include as part of the assignment. So we have pre-written questions for all of our lessons, but they're fully customizable. So you can go with the questions we have, remove any you don't want, you can edit them, or you can add your own questions as well. So once again, those are fully customizable there. We source additional external materials for all of our lessons. These include things like news articles and videos that help provide a little more context to the story. So if you want to include any of these, you can certainly do so here. And then on the instructions tab, this is where you can just include instructions for your students and how you want them to complete the assignment. So for example, you could say, listen to the story up to 3 times and answer questions below. Once you have saved the assignment, then you can do a quick preview of it if you want to see what it looks like on your students end here. So you can see what your student experience in the assignment is. This is also where you can check out that read aloud text help toolbar, which you can use to highlight any text on the page and have it read aloud to you.
Listen to the story.
You can also highlight single words if you want to get a dictionary definition or a Spanish language translation. Or even if you want, you can highlight an entire sentence or paragraph. And under the Spanish language translation, you can actually have it read aloud as well.
Escuche la historia hasta 3 veces y responda las preguntas siguientes.
So once you check it out and it looks like it's a good assignment to use with your students, then you can just come over here. This is where you go ahead and assign it to the class. So you could find the class that you want to assign it to, set a due date here. You can also set a date available. So say, for example, you don't want the assignment to be pushed out right away. You want it to be scheduled for a later date. You can just click in here and schedule it to be assigned at a later date. Any classrooms that you have linked with Google, you can click on the Share to Google Classroom button here, and this is what will pair it with Google and have it show up on your students' assignment dashboard in Google. And then lastly, like I'd mentioned, you can do differentiation within a class. So if you want, instead of assigning it to the whole class at the same time, if you click on the drop down here, you will see all the students in your class and you can assign it to specific students there. So say you only want to assign it to your English learners, you can do so here, and then go back, create a second version of the assignment for your other students and assign it to them. So once again, you can do full differentiation within one lesson, but to provide different levels of supports to different students. Once you have all of that configured and you're ready to assign, then you just click on the search or the assign button over here, and it will push out to your students. You'll be good to go. I did see a question about the audio clips. Do they evolve over the course of the week? Are they as an individual clip? So once we upload a lesson or a current event to the library, there's no updates to that specific audio story. We do, in our current events library, we want to try to keep it fairly relevant and up to date with what's going on in the world. So you may see over the course of a period of time that there are multiple current events lessons that are on similar topics or the same topic, because maybe the story has evolved over time. So you will see some updates in that regard. The standards aligned lessons, those are designed to be a little more evergreen. So the topics tend to just, they tend to just be a little more applicable regardless of how old they might be or point in time. Are there any other questions or any questions about assigning a written assignment? The other thing that I want to show you all is assigning a quiz. So assigning a quiz is very easy. Similar to an assignment, you just click on the Manage Quiz or the Assign Quiz button on the right-hand side. And because all the quiz questions are already pre-written, all you have to do on your end is just choose the class that you want to assign it to, and then decide if you want to include listening supports or not. And what this means is if you assign the quiz with the listening supports, this is what your students will see. In addition to the audio and the multiple choice quiz questions, they get the transcript, they have that slower audio feature, and they have the read aloud text help toolbar. If you provide it to them without those listening supports, then all your students see is the audio and the multiple choice quizzes. So no transcript, no slower audio feature, no text help toolbar. So depending on how challenging you want to make the quiz, or depending on how many supports students need, then you can provide those supports to them or not when you're assigning the quiz. And just like a written assignment, you can differentiate within the classroom. So I'll show you here, when you go to assign a quiz to a class, just pick the class here. You can choose the due date. Just like a written assignment, you can also choose to either have it pushed out immediately or scheduled for a later date. And then, like I said, you can include the listening supports here for the whole class. Or if you want, if you do the roster drop down here, you can select specific students that you want to assign the quiz to. And within that, students that you either want or don't want to get those listening supports. So you can assign the same quiz to all your students in the class, but provide the listening supports to some of your students and not to others, depending on what their particular needs are. So you can fully differentiate once again within the class. Any classes that you've connected with Google Classroom, you have the option here to share the quiz to Google Classroom and also have quiz scores sent over to Google. So once your students complete the quiz, they will see their quiz scores will then be logged in their Google Gradebook. And then similar to a written assignment, just click on the Assign button down here once you are ready to assign it to your students. Any questions about assigning a quiz?
Yes, hi, this is Carla. I'm looking at it now, and do all quizzes have listening support? Because I'm hovering over one and then showing a circle with a dash over it, a red circle. I wonder.
Yeah, so you're in the assign quiz page here?
Yes, I think I just didn't click the first one. If you don't click the first tab, then
Exactly.
yeah. Okay, got it. Perfect.
Yeah. No problem. Yeah, that can be a little confusing. You have to click on the class, and then you have the option to include the listening supports or not. So
Fantastic. Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions at this time?
Matt, there's a question in the chat box. It's not necessarily regarding quizzes, but Yoli had mentioned, is there a way to search by grade levels? Some of us serve TK through 12 grades.
Yes. Yeah, so there are a few different options that you have there. So I'll go back to the search page here. So you have the option to, if you want to search, I'm going to clear out my search history here, so that way everything is now available again. So you have the option here to search by the Lexile audio measure. So if you go by the recommendations that we have here, you can put in a specific range for Lexile audio measures that will align to grade level. We have these more general bands here, which fall into low, medium, and high. If you're looking for something a little more general, maybe you're looking to find content for a band of a few different grade levels, you can do so that way. You can also search by, so you can't search specifically by, say, first or second grade, but you can look at grade level, either elementary, middle school, or high school. And what this does is all of our lessons and current events are all, they're all marked as either elementary, middle, or high school level based on both the complexity of the content, how challenging it is, and then also what the actual content is. So what topics are covered, the language used, appropriate level, things like that. So you can search by specific grade level, not by first or second, but by elementary, middle, or our high school there. And then the other thing that you can always do is if you click on the right-hand side here on Browse by Standards, this is where you can search. So based on what grade you're teaching, you can see your state-specific standards, and then within that, stories that align to that grade level standard. So those are different ways that you'd be able to get a little more specific with grade level. Great question, though. I know that's especially in a school where you're teaching a wide range of grades. I know that's very important to find there. The last thing I just wanted to go over really quick, I know we're a little over time here, but I just wanted to show you on the website here is under the Classes tab. This is where you'll do all your class and roster management. So you can see here, you have under the Classes tab, you have assignments, which is where you can see upcoming assignments you have for that particular class. Under student progress, this is where you can see how your students are performing within the class. Specifically on those quizzes, you can see what their quiz average is across all quizzes that you have assigned to them. And if you click on the C-Class Summary Report here, this is where you can see a breakdown of how your students are performing on quizzes in the class. And what's really cool about our listening quizzes is all of the multiple choice questions are all focused on a specific listening skill. So things like identifying the main idea of the story, or understanding the literal meaning, or understanding vocabulary within the story. And then you can see a breakdown of how your students are performing in each one of those areas. So you can get an idea on where is it they're having the most success, or where do they need a little more support. And then you can tailor your instruction to fit those particular needs there. So I always like to just show the class summary report because it can give a really good indicator on how your students are performing, and then allow you to tailor your instruction based off of that. Lastly, on the Classes tab, I just wanted to show you under Manage Classes. This is where you can find those class rosters. If you've linked to Google Classroom, you can update the rosters here. If you're doing everything directly through Listenwise, this is where you'll find your class code that you can provide to students to have them get signed up with their own accounts and enrolled in your class. So all of that classroom management you do under the Manage Classes tab here. Are there any questions about any of that? Assignments, quizzes, classroom management, any of that before we jump back into the slides just to finish up?
I just have one. This is Carla. I was wondering, when you sign up with Google Classroom, is there a code that I also need to give them so that the students could sign up?
No, so if you are, if you're importing your rosters over from Google Classroom, then your students actually don't need the class code at all. They'll be automatically enrolled through those existing Google accounts that they have. So if you're doing everything through Google Classroom, then when your students go to sign up, just have them click on the sign in with Google button and they'll be all set. They won't even have to create a separate Listenwise account. Everything will be done directly through that Google account that's already set up.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
No problem. So I'm just going to jump back into the slides here. Just wanted to go over a few different instructional strategies for utilizing Listenwise that we always recommend. So first off, in terms of frequency for usage, if possible, we always like to recommend using Listenwise once a week if possible. It just helps students build up their listening stamina, helps them get used to doing these kinds of assignments since they may not be familiar with doing a lot of auditory based assignments and lessons. So if possible, and it also helps provide them with a bit of a routine. They get used to maybe Wednesdays, you do the current event with a quiz. So they get used to Wednesdays is current events Wednesday, or on Fridays, they do that debate topic, or maybe it's a Monday start of the class bell ringer activity or something like that. So, if possible, we know, it's not always possible to have that much, that same structure every single week. But if possible, we know it can be very helpful for students there. We also recommend definitely scaffolding the assignments with different levels of resources over time. So for example, maybe providing the transcript early on to help students build up some of that confidence, and then over the course of the year, starting to par back on some of those additional supports. So removing the transcript, removing the text help toolbar, and just providing less support to your students. But as they're building up those listening comprehension skills, they can make up for it in that way. And then lastly, we have our weird news stories. I don't think I mentioned these before, but it's part of our current events collection. Every Sunday, we put a news story up that's under our weird news collection. And these stories, as you can gather from the title, they are kind of more lighthearted, fun stories that are really popular, especially with younger students, because they just cover some more fun, outlandish topics, and they're generally fairly short. They're all about 30 seconds or less. So it's really easy to integrate them into the classroom because it does not take a lot of classroom time. But within those stories, there still is some good academic language and vocabulary. So you can provide the benefit of that to your students without overwhelming them with a longer story. So in general, our stories are not very long. Our current events are all about 4 minutes. Our lessons, the longer form lessons, are more in like the 5 to 6 minute range. So in general, they're not long stories, but the weird news stories are, they're extra short right there. So they can be a great place to start. We also definitely recommend utilizing Listenwise in conjunction with other apps that you're already using in the classroom. So popular ones are Newsela and Common Lit, because those are text-based resources, especially Newsela, which has their current events feature. A lot of their topics are aligned with Listenwise topics. So you could set up something like a station rotation model where you have students within the class, maybe at one station using Listenwise to listen to a story, and then they move to another station. They read a related story in Newsela or in Common Lit, something like that, and just helps them work on a few different literary skills while still focusing on one main topic or subject area. And then lastly, our first month of Listenwise guide. So I will share this with all of you. I'm going to put it into the chat box right now, but we will email this out as well. But the first month of Listenwise guide right here just provides a quick overview, step-by-step on what we recommend for the first few weeks of utilizing Listenwise with your students to help both you and your students get ramped up and used to using the resources in the classroom. So we definitely recommend. It's not a, you don't have to follow it word for word. It's more of a recommendation, but it can be a great way just to get used to using the lessons and get your students used to them as well. So are there any questions about any of that? I know we covered a lot of material over the course of this training. But any final questions, things that we didn't cover that you were interested in, I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes here to answer any questions that people have. Additionally, also, like I said, you can always reach out to me as well. If you have any questions as you get started using Listenwise, feel free to reach out, and I'd be more than happy to provide some additional support. And we have a great support site as well, which has different blog posts, articles. We have example activities from other teachers, things like that. So definitely recommend checking that out as well. But are there any other questions at this time?
I don't see any coming in the chat, Matt, but I really appreciate you being here and walking us through the features and the tools and taking an extra 20 minutes to show us some of those features. Thank you all so much too, for those of you who were able to stick around. I know we have a jam-packed afternoon, so thanks so much for being here today, and we'll definitely be able to